Judy Garland was a Hollywood icon, but when she died, no one could believe the shocking secret revealed in her will. Welcome to History Snob. Today we're delving into the heartbreaking secret life of Judy Garland. It is a story that still sadly is relevant today. So let us know in the comments below. Why do you think it's so tough being a child celebrity? And is it even worth the cost? Judy Garland was born Frances Ethel Gumm on June 10, 1922 in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Her parents, Ethel and Frank, were vaudeville performers who settled in Grand Rapids to run a movie theater that featured vaudeville acts. Judy's entire family had a flair for song and dance, and she shared this passion from a young age. She was only 2 years old when she performed for the first time with her older sisters. They put on a Christmas show at their father's theater, and Judy sang Jingle Bells. The public response was so overwhelmingly positive that it became a tradition. Being showbiz people themselves, Judy's parents decided to go all in on their daughter's talents. Frank and Ethel used them to form a vaudeville group called the Gumm Sisters. In June 1926, the family relocated to Lancaster, California. Although going to California was a good move for their careers, the real reason they left Grand Rapids was actually to cover up the truth about their father. Rumors had spread about Frank Gumm enjoying the company of other men. Some sources even claimed that Frank had constantly cheated on his wife with multiple men throughout their marriage. As you can imagine, these kinds of rumors were not taken lightly back in the 1920s. For the safety of himself, his family, and probably his marriage as well, Frank took his family to a new state to start fresh. Although what Frank did was questionable, it is not nearly as bad as what his wife did to their children. Ethel reportedly treated all 3 of her daughters horribly, from taking the girls to inappropriate clubs to perform, to giving the girls pills to ramp up their energy as well as ones to help them sleep. Judy wasn't even 10 years old when her mother started feeding her pills. This abuse ended up playing a large role in the rest of her life, as before she even turned 18, she was already an addict. But we'll get more into that later. But this was just the tip of the iceberg of Ethel's awful treatment. She apparently also blatantly ignored the well-being of her daughters, forcing them to perform even if they were extremely ill. Anytime they would complain about not feeling well, Ethel would threaten to hurt them if they didn't get on stage. With all of this in mind, it makes sense that Garland later referred to her mother as the real Wicked Witch of the West. If you're wondering how Judy Gumm became Judy Garland, it happened in 1934 as a result of an unfortunate incident. The sisters were on tour at a famous theater in Chicago. They were obviously doing okay as an act, but they weren't yet super famous. When they were presented as the Gumm Sisters, the audience erupted in laughter. The name just didn't have that much of a ring to it. But there was another funny mistake that made it clear a name change was necessary. Reportedly, they were once erroneously billed on a theater marquee as the Gumm Sisters. The theater owner encouraged them to change their name to something more appealing. And so the group became the Garland Sisters. This was the first of many compromises Judy Garland would have to make, and they would only get more and more demanding as she became America's sweetheart. By mid-1934, Judy officially became, well, Judy, dropping the name Frances for good. In September 1935, Garland and her father were brought for an impromptu audition at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios after composer Burton Lane saw the Garland sisters perform. Lane believed that Judy had a natural talent that outshone the others. The audition went so well that MGM immediately signed her to a contract. Little did Judy know she was signing away her soul to the devil. Although MGM saw her talent, they weren't really sure what to do with her. At the time, she was 13 years old, which was considered old for a child star, but still too young for adult roles. Judy's physical appearance was also seen as a dilemma for MGM, with tragic consequences in the years to come. Hollywood had an extremely narrow definition of beauty, and unfortunately for Judy, she didn't fit that standard. MGM considered her cute, or looking like the girl next door. But what the industry called for at the time was a glamorous bombshell appearance. In other words, Hollywood producers thought Judy was an ugly duckling. MGM continuously commented on her unattractive appearance throughout her career. Louis B. Mayer, one of the founders of MGM, referred to her as his little hunchback, which is pretty rich if you've ever seen a photo of him. I mean, come on, honestly. The constant harping on her appearance shattered Judy's confidence. She came to believe she was ugly, and it caused her intense pain. The insults cut deep and left scars that would define the rest of her life. MGM eventually decided that something drastic had to be done about Judy's looks. They forced her to wear hideous, frilly gowns to fit her plain girl-next-door persona. They also had her wear removable teeth caps to hide her crooked teeth, and they reshaped her nose using rubberized discs. Just as Judy's career was about to take off, she had to face some truly heartbreaking news. On November 16, 1935, Garland's father was hospitalized with meningitis. Overnight, his medical condition took a turn for the worse, and by the next morning he had passed away, leaving Judy devastated and even more at the mercy of people who didn't have her best interests at heart. The next few years of Judy's life was a slow climb to fame. She got a few roles that kept her in the industry, but nothing truly noteworthy happened for her until 1937, when MGM paired her with Mickey Rooney in the film Thoroughbreds Don't Cry. After this, she was cast as a literal girl next door in Love Finds Andy Hardy, where Rooney was the main character. By 1941, they had filmed multiple movies together and were regarded as a winning box office duo. But as Garland found success, behind the scenes her world was falling apart. Judy was struggling to keep up with her schedule. She later admitted that both she and Rooney were forced to take amphetamines to stay awake and keep up with the frantic pace of filming. They were also given barbiturates to take before bed to help them sleep. Garland confirmed that this began what would become a lifelong struggle with substance abuse. In 1938, Garland would take on her most iconic role, Dorothy Gale in The Wizard of Oz. She didn't know it at the time, but she would forever be remembered for her role in the film, and the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow. The film was a great success, impacting people all around the world, but no one knew about the horrors that went on behind the scenes. Hollywood wasn't done making Judy question her appearance and overall worth. Garland was forced onto dangerous diets, despite already being a healthy weight. The studio insisted she do this. They even went as far as only serving her chicken soup and black coffee whenever she asked for food on set. There were also reports that she was given cigarettes and was encouraged to smoke whenever she felt hungry. Despite the growing struggles in her life, there was a brief moment of happiness. Following the success of The Wizard of Oz, Judy won an Academy Juvenile Award for her performance. This was a big deal as she was one of only 12 people to ever be awarded one. After all of this, she finally started transitioning into adulthood, starring in her first adult role in 1940. At the same time, she was also swept off her feet by a musician named David Rose. Shortly after they started dating, Rose proposed to Garland on her 18th birthday. This relationship was frowned upon for a couple of reasons. First, Rose was 12 years her senior. Legal, but questionable. Also, Rose was technically still married at the time of the proposal. But neither of them were discouraged by people's concerns, and 1 year later, after Rose's divorce finalized, they tied the knot. But unfortunately for Judy, this happy marriage did not last long. Shortly after they got married, Garland became pregnant. MGM, her mother, and Rose all forced her to get an abortion. This led to Garland and Rose separating, and eventually divorcing in 1944. Sadly, this was just the beginning of Judy's problems. Throughout her life, she married a total of 5 times. Aside from Rose, she also married Vincent Minnelli, Sid Luft, Mark Herron, and her final husband Mickey Deans, although they didn't get to spend much time together before she died. The failed marriages, the scandals, the abuse, the addiction to drugs. Judy was dealing with a lot. Her life was just one struggle after another. It comes as no surprise that this eventually led to a meltdown. In 1947, while filming The Pirate, Judy snapped. She had a complete nervous breakdown that brought her to the point where she tried to end it all. This was followed by her spending 2 weeks in a psychiatric facility getting help. But it wasn't enough. Shortly after her release, she developed a drinking problem and was suffering from depression. Eventually, she saw a doctor that advised her that she needed to slow down, only working 4 to 5 days in a row with long rest periods afterwards. MGM wasn't thrilled about this and made the decision to just suspend her. Although she returned for a while afterwards, she ultimately left the studio in September 1950, 15 years after she started there. Her career wasn't over though. She made several appearances on Bing Crosby's radio show. After this, she got cast in A Star is Born, and even got her own variety hour called The Judy Garland Show. Despite everything she was going through, she still managed to persevere. But her demons never left, and in June 1969, they finally won. Garland was found unconscious on her bathroom floor by her husband, Mickey Deans. She'd accidentally overdosed on barbiturates. It was determined that it was the excessive use of the drug over a long period of time that had killed her, not one single overdose. She didn't realize how much had built up in her system. It was a genuine accident. Judy Garland was only 47 years old when she died, and her premature passing was mourned by millions. It was a tragic end for a woman who had been a role model for so many women. But the most shocking secret of all came out when Judy Garland's will was released. Despite starring in many acclaimed films and making a name for herself in Hollywood, Garland was discovered to be in a terrible financial state at the time of her death. She was virtually broke and deep in debt. Her wealth had been managed so badly by those she trusted that it basically amounted to fraud. Judy was also known to be lavishly generous to charities, as well as her family, even when she was barely scraping by. Her daughter worked to help pay off her debt, with the help of an old family friend, Frank Sinatra. But this wasn't enough. In 1978, Garland's heirs were forced to sell her possessions at an auction. Almost 500 items were up for sale, including copper cookware and musical arrangements. The auction raised $250,000 at the time, which is equivalent to $920,000 US today. The story of Judy Garland is tragic, but it bears remembering. And hopefully the truth about how the industry treated her encourages others to hold Hollywood to a higher standard and call out powerful people in cases of mistreatment. That's it for the video today. Let us know down in the comments what you think of Judy Garland and her tragic story. And if you want to see more videos from us, make sure to like and subscribe to History Snob. Thanks for watching.